Ever since I was a young boy, I want to say like since middle school, I've been interested in very few things here and there. I would be interested in certain things for like a month and then drop it. There are three things that I held on to for a long time. Number one, anime. Number two, video games. And number three, parkour. Now two of those three things I'm still actively engaging in, and one of those I am not. Which of these am I not actively engaging in? If you said letter A, anime, congratulations, you're wrong. And if you said letter B, video games, congratulations, you're dumb. But if you said letter C, parkour, then congratulations, you are 100% correct. Now myself, like many other youth growing up in the mid-2000s, was completely obsessed with parkour videos on YouTube. I'd watch compilation videos of people jumping from rooftop to rooftop, narrowly avoiding death. And then I'd also watch compilation videos of people jumping from rooftop to rooftop, falling off, and at the time, thinking they died. So naturally, I wanted to pursue the same things that these internet superheroes attempted to do, and also, just as naturally, I did some cool things and some not so cool things. This led to two things. Number one, I got enrolled into my local gymnastics club to learn how to do tumbling, and number two, I got entranced with a little game called Mirror's Edge. Again, one of those stuck with me, and one of those did not. For the uninitiated, Mirror's Edge is a game about parkour. It was developed by DICE and was published by EA. You're gonna be jumping, you're gonna be vaulting, you're gonna be sliding, you're gonna be shimmying, you're gonna be tucking and rolling, you're gonna be doing all this stuff through 10 levels of high octane action running. And you perform all these actions with a control scheme that for some reason just makes sense. Left bumper to jump, left trigger to roll, right bumper to shift your perspective, and right trigger to attack enemies, while the face buttons are used for less common actions such as slowing down time and disarming enemies. It doesn't make sense that a traditional action that's normally been associated with the face button has been delegated to a bumper, but as Todd Howard once said, all of this just works. What else just works is the level design, which is arguably the best aspect of this game. Each and every level has different ways to approach it, and each and every level allows you to beat it faster and faster every time you go through it. Here's an example from the opening chapter. In the beginning of the level, you actually come to a point where you go through a vent and you fall through the vent. And in front of you are a bunch of guards. Now, number one, you can go up these set of stairs right here and just take the slow, boring route all the way up to the top. Or, number two, and the more cool way, you can run up this wall, turn around, vault over this fence right here, railing, and then climb up the rest of the stairs that way. Number one saves you time, and number two, it makes it look cool while you do it. There's also an instance where you're running from a helicopter, and when you make a sharp right turn, there's a way to take the stairs up, or you can hop over this little vent right here, jump off this wall, swing on this railing, and all of a sudden you're up the stairs without even trying. It's moments like these that make the level design a pretty successful element in my opinion. But there are a ton of minor things that you can do to speed up the process, such as wall running and then turning mid-wall run to jump on a ledge, instead of stopping your momentum and then turning to look at the ledge and climb it that way. Or when you jump from a high spot, instead of rolling, which stops your momentum, you can instead aim for an elevated spot, and instead of rolling, it won't stop your momentum when you just land and continue running, negating the fact to roll. And all of this combined makes it a speedrunner's dream. And I'm no speedrunner, but I have the memorization for all the level layouts, and I was able to actually clear the first 4 chapters of this game in 35 minutes. And in total, I actually beat the game in less than 3 hours, which is kind of crazy considering the first time I played it, it took me about 6 hours to beat, and it was kind of this long-winded experience at that point. And that idea surrounds not only just this level, but the entirety of this game. The whole foundation is built upon this idea of just finding your own path. Because Mirror's Edge is a game with a story, both a written narrative and more importantly, a gameplay narrative. A narrative where you, the player, choose how to navigate this massive playground. Just makes me wish there was a playground where an open world where you can parkour and explore and do all these fantastic things, and there was a game and it came out in 2016 and it is the sequel to this game, and we will touch on that in another video another day, but for right now that is not going to be touched upon in this video. But the environment isn't just fun to play in, it's also, get this, nice to look at. For some reason this game holds up even after being out since 2008. It still seems to be really pretty, and I think I can attribute that to the level design. As long as you're not focusing on details like the AC unit that I'm shimmying on behind me where everything looks really pixelated and blurry. Again, this game did come out in 2008. And each level has its own choice of distinct color that pops out as you go through each chapter. The prologue is primarily a white cityscape with little hints of blue and gray sprinkled throughout, while the next level is primarily orange and green with some random colors splashed in there. Each chapter has one or two colors that dominate it throughout, and for some reason it makes the game feel more unique, because while you see nothing but empty buildings with no NPCs other than enemies, it still remains beautiful. Now keep in mind what I just said about rooftop NPCs, because I'm going to come back to that in just a minute here. Now I'm going to take a minute here to discuss my fears, and I know it's going to sound really random that I'm breaking off from this topic here with no script, but I'm going to tell you right now, I have two big fears. Number one, insects. I can't stand bugs, I cannot stand spiders or anything like that. Number two, it is footsteps, and what I mean by that, it is the audible sound of footsteps coming from a distance that I cannot discern where it's coming from. I cannot. I'm getting scared. Anytime that I cannot see where the footsteps are coming from, all I can do is hear them, either from behind me or somewhere in a horror movie. It immediately triggers my fight or flight sense, and my anxiety starts to just shoot right up. Now that you know this little tidbit about me, a prime example of this is in Mirror's Edge Chapter 6. This is the moment in Mirror's Edge story where shit hits the fan, dog. I'm not kidding you. There's a certain point in this chapter where you get to this underground facility, and you see these other people that approach you, and they are also runners. And when you start running, they start running. And when you start running, you can hear their footsteps behind you. So imagine my terror when I'm playing this brightly colored white-ass game and I cannot hear these footsteps, and I'm still getting anxiety as I haul ass to the nearest checkpoint so I can get away from these motherfuckers, dog.
FBI, open up!
So this is why I hate the rooftop enemies in this game, because even if you're mildly competent at the game and you can still outrun these characters, you can still hear them behind you, always. And even if they're far away, you can still hear the footsteps, and it still trips me out. So that is my own personal deal, I understand that, but that is literally the most wild shit that I cannot stand in a game. And I say all this because it does a great example of DICE breaking up the tedium of you just constantly running. Either you're running from someone, you're running towards someone, you are running to an objective in some way, but it's just enough that they break it up to not feel repetitive. It is a puzzle platformer from a first-person perspective, and it is very unique in that aspect. Now, the only thing that used to bother me about this game was the loading times because of the elevators. You see, back on them 360 days, you had to sit in an elevator and press a button and wait for the button to register and then wait in the elevator until the speech over the intercom got done, and I got so tired of hearing, "It's a little bit of paradise," after my 45th playthrough. The game just brings so much variety and creativity in its level design. And the music. It's always ambient unless things pick up and you're in combat. When you get into the combat, the music does pick up, but for the most part, when you're running, you're by yourself running. And I do like the fact that the ambient music complements the sound effects that you have. Whether that be Faith's sound effects of her foot running on the ground, or her feet hitting the railing when she jumps off to a springboard, or when she's sliding down poles or swinging off rails, you can hear the actual grip sliding off of everything. It is a really nice detail and touch that they put into the game. Now you'll notice I haven't touched the story, and that is because despite me playing this multiple times, I still don't know what the story's about. I was in 7th grade when this game dropped, and I was just so infatuated with the concept of just doing parkour that I skipped the story entirely. And now I skip the story entirely because I don't really care about the story at all. Except for this part right here. It is told via these comic book panels that they do, and it's also told through in-game cutscenes, but I suggest if you want to know more about the story, you should just go to Google and type in "what is Mirror's Edge about" and see what pops up for you. And I think it's one of those instances where the story is not the main problem, it's the fact that the gameplay is just so much more exciting and so much better than the story that you just kind of forget that it's there. You think I watched God of High School because I was watching it for the story? No, I was watching it because I like the animation and I like the fight scenes, and that's about it. I just want to turn off my brain and watch something. Same thing with Mirror's Edge, I just want to turn off my brain and run. Other than the story being less than stellar, there is one aspect of this game that does not tickle me in all the right spots. It's just touching the areas that I just do not want to be touched because it is so bad. In fact, it is so bad that it is almost infuriating to me, and of course I am referring to the combat in this game. It is not the bee's knees. No sirree. Because remember chapter 6? Yeah, all the footage you see me right now is footage from chapter 0 all the way to chapter 6. After chapter 6, when we hit chapter 7, is what I like to call the downhill slide of Mirror's Edge. I call it this because instead of the game capitalizing on what's made it great so far for the past 6 chapters, it instead wants to now emphasize its combat, which up until this point you have not heard me talk about in depth, and that changes now. Where do I even start with this catastrophe of combat? Oh my god. I guess just the good aspects of it, which is when you're not actively engaging with it. Combat is at its best when you are engaging with it in its most fluid and most minimal form. We're talking about slide kicking dudes in the balls, we're talking about running off walls and kicking people in the face, and just moving on at that point. But speaking of which, I didn't do it in this playthrough footage, but when you kick someone in the side of the head, it is the most satisfying thing when they just turn their neck and they do that Spider-Man Brazil trailer they just did, which the lizard gets turned his neck like that. It is the most satisfying thing ever, and I would love to do it, but I just didn't do it for this playthrough because I just wanted to get this video out. Alright, editor's note over. We're also talking about avoiding enemies entirely because they are a pain in the ass to deal with and take up too much time. And it is due to this will of just trying to get out of every combat situation that lies Mirror's Edge's core problem with combat. If I would prefer to disengage from an altercation rather than using the tools provided to me to engage the altercation, that makes that tool poorly designed. I am actively choosing to run at full speed dodging bullets rather than slowing down to engage in the combat, and that's the problem right there. Rather than addressing the problem, the game forces you into combat scenarios, 3 very different combat scenarios, through Chapter 7, 8, and 9. Chapter 7 has you fighting a 1v1 battle with a runner who is built just like you. It's supposed to be this tense battle of just, hand-to-hand combat like an action karate movie, but instead it just divulges into me just jumping backward and kicking someone in the head like I'm fucking Liu Kang from Mortal Kombat. Just jumping, kicking, kicking. And I only discovered that strategy on this playthrough. I just got so tired of trying to do the game legitimately that I just started jumping backwards and kicking this chick in the head over and over again. Chapter 8, the end of Chapter 8 specifically, has you running down a flight of stairs while about 10 to 15 soldiers all suited up as if they're gonna fight Superman is trying to take you out with all their guns loaded. And again, this forces you into a combat scenario where you're disarming an enemy, taking his weapon, shooting him, and then running to the next enemy, shooting him, taking his weapon and running to the next enemy and shooting him, taking his weapon and then running to the next enemy, and then shooting him, taking his weapon, and then running, and repeat over and over again until you get to the bottom of the stairs. Chapter 9 basically said, fuck it, just throw him into a room and you can just take them all out before the door even opens. It won't even give you an option to move forward until you take out every single enemy. And again, it's about 10 to 15 people in there, and you have to take a gun, shoot them all, and do it again where you have to repeat over and over and over again until you get to the end of the door. And I mean, the game was doing such a great job up until this point with having you do these little puzzle platforming sections. I mean, shit, even Chapter 8 has you do this great puzzle platforming section where you're climbing the top of a construction tower to get to a sniper point. And it's it takes about 3 to 5 minutes if you know what you're doing, but it was like this super convoluted puzzle when you're trying to figure out the first time going through. And it's those instances like that that make Mirror's Edge so great, not the combat when you're fighting enemies over and over again trying to escape and make a grand plan out of any situation that developers throw at you. But to cap this video off, I think what really encapsulates the Mirror's Edge and parkour enthusiast in me is the world design, the colors, not the combat, what the fuck am I talking about? The exploration, the running, the controls, all of that stuff just encapsulates a great experience while gaming. So to bring this video to a close, I personally believe that everyone should experience Mirror's Edge once in their life. It's got great art design, it's got great controls, it's got great level design, so what is there not to like? other than the combat and other than the story. And make sure if you play the sequel, just focus on the main levels and just focus on running. Nothing more, nothing less. Currently I'm working on a video for Hollow Knight. I'm also working on another video for another little game called Binary Domain. For those of you who know what that is, you guys get a cookie from me to you. But until then, when I have those videos out, I will see you in the next one. Appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Mean it. Bye.